Okay, so welcome back after half term. It's Monday, the 22nd of February. Today we're starting a new unit, and today's can I create an imaginary setting? So that's what we're looking at today. Very quickly though, first a quick grammar task. Can you fill in the gaps with a suitable subordinating conjunction? So we've got 5 sentences there, and I just want you to think of a suitable subordinating conjunction, go in those gaps so that sentence makes sense. If you've forgotten, so a subordinating conjunction are words that create complex sentences. So for example, things like because, although, even though, until, when, unless, whilst, any words like those. So I would think which words you could put in there that would make complex sentences. Okay, so there are a few different options for each one. So I've got some answers which work, and you may have got those, but there may be also some other words, some other subordinate conjunctions you use which are just fine as well. So my ones were Julia stood in line for the cinema until they let everybody in. Other words that might work would be whilst they let everyone in, that would work as well. David worried about going outside because it was so stormy. Since Jess had locked the cupboard, Max couldn't get any biscuits. Also in that sentence you could have because Jess had locked the cupboard, that would work just as well. You could even perhaps put when in there. When Jess had locked the cupboard, Max couldn't get any biscuits, that would work perfectly well. I've got until the rain stopped, they couldn't go out to play. You could have unless the rain stopped as well. We can get an ice cream when the van arrives. I put we can get an ice cream, I think when is the only one I can think of off the top of my head that works in there, but you might have thought of another one. So there you go, they're the ones that work for me, but you might have got some slightly different ones. Okay, so we're going to start off today. What our week's task is this week is we're going to write a diary entry of a day in your life that's a little bit different from normal, and it's going to be an imaginary day in your life. So don't start sitting there thinking, oh God, I've got to think of a day in my life that's different from normal. Don't worry, we're going to come up with that imaginary day in your life. I'm going to start today. So first thing is, I don't know where you are. Maybe you're out walking your dog, or you're walking along in the street and you're on your own and you just see this sort of picture here. So you just see this strange little shop. And in a second, I just want you to pause the video and have a think about some of these questions and maybe jot down some ideas just in your mind about some answers to these questions. So firstly, it's a curiosity shop, and you can see it's a bit strange, a bit different from normal. What sort of things might they sell in there? So maybe you have a think about what sort of things. You can see some things almost on the front there, some kind of labels and signs of what they might sell there. So have a think, what sort of things might they sell? What do you think the man who owns the shop is like? Have a look at him. What's he wearing? How's he standing? What does he look like? What do we think he might be like? What is this thing on his shoulder as well? Has his shop always been there? Is it something which you kind of always knew was there and you'd never seen before? Or did it just arrive? And how did it get here? Did it just appear? Did it just sort of fly through the air? Did it come up out of the ground? How did it get here? If you look at the bottom there, you can see a wanted poster, a picture of someone. So who is wanted on that poster? Who is that a picture of? And who is wanted? Have a think. Just make it up. It's all imaginary. What's the big horn for at the front there? Horn. What on earth might that be for? And finally, would you dare to enter? So just pause the video here for a little bit and just have a think about some answers to those questions. Just jot down a few ideas. Okay, so despite all of your maybe concerns about the shop, you're far too intrigued to walk on by. And so maybe against your better judgment, you actually go inside and you step inside the shop. Now, I don't know what the inside of the shop looks like. One thing that's definitely for certain is it's a lot bigger on the inside than it looks just from this picture. It's actually quite large on the inside. And inside, there's all manner of strange objects and things. Just anything you can imagine is in there somewhere. And it's not all neatly ordered on the shelves. It's all kind of cluttered everywhere in little corners and nooks and crannies and little rooms. And it doesn't seem to be just one room. In fact, it seems to be lots of little rooms here and there. And there isn't anyone really sort of in there. You're the only one in there, and there's no sort of shop assistant, and the guy who runs it doesn't seem to be sort of hassling you in any way or following you around. You seem sort of free to wander and have a look at all these bizarre things that are in the shop. So I just want you to, again, just pause the video in a second and have a think about what do you find in there. Don't jot anything down at the moment because we're going to do that in a second. But first, just think in your head, what do you find in there? What sort of things might you find, and whereabouts might they be? You know, they're not just going to be boringly on the shelves. Whereabouts could they be? And do you just go up to the counter and pay like in a normal shop? Surely not. How does that work? Does a shopkeeper, the assistant, suddenly sort of appear behind you the minute you think in your head, oh, I might buy that? Suddenly he somehow appears, he knows, and he appears right next to you and says the price. Is there no price on it? Do you walk up to the counter and literally there's no one there? And you just sort of end up walking out the shop as like there's no one around? Is the counter just bare? Maybe there's the price, but there's no one to pay, and you just leave. And the price is maybe just like a silver coin. So you just leave like a silver coin on the counter and walk out. Like, how do you do that? How do you pay? How does that work? So just pause the video, have a little think about those things. Maybe if you're with a partner, you can obviously talk to your partner, share some ideas. Okay. So now we're going to get onto the bit we're writing about today. So what we're going to do is we're going to write two things. So first, we're going to think, well, what do you find in the shop and where do you find it? So you're going to think of between 5 and 8 things, so a minimum of 5 things you find and where you find them, and a maximum of 8 things you find and where you find them. And you're just going to have a think of what you find and where do you find it. So I have got some examples, which I will share for you in a minute, but I want you to have a think first. So I want you to write down some ideas of what you find and where you find it. If you get 5 to 8 done, brilliant. If you can only get 2 done because you run out of ideas, fine, come back and then play the video on and you might get a few more ideas. So I'll let you pause it there and have a think about those first. Okay, so hopefully you've got some ideas down. So I'm going to share with you some of my ideas first. And then I'll share with you something else. So here are my ideas firstly. So I thought firstly, what could I find? Well, I could find a monkey's paw. I might find a brass lamp. I might find a skeleton of a lizard in a jar, maybe a jar labeled poison, and a top hat. They're my 5 things I might find. And where could I find them? Well, I could find them maybe in a dark corner, maybe underneath a layer of cobwebs, behind the counter, maybe in a rusted old iron chest, or in a tiny hole in the wall, maybe. This small item has just kind of lodged it. And I got those ideas, and you're welcome to use those as well. But I thought these ideas, often ideas get better if you add one little extra detail to it. So I'm kind of not satisfied with these ideas. They're a good starting point, but I want to add a little extra detail to each one. So not just a brass lamp, but just something else. A brass lamp, what though? It's one more thing. And that makes it really, really unique. It creates these really interesting items. That's the trick. It's not about just thinking of amazing, interesting items straight out. It's about thinking of something that might be quite normal, like a top hat or a jar, but then thinking, oh, what extra things could I add to that to make it a little bit more? It's the same with where you find them. So in a dark corner, fine, but could you add something else that makes it just a little bit extra, a little bit more interesting? So I've done that with mine. So again, I'll give you a chance to pause the video here if you want to have a go and add your ideas before you see mine. So I'll let you pause it here. Okay, so I've added something to each one. So I'm going to go on to the next one. So rather than just a monkey's paw, it's going to be a shriveled monkey's paw. I think that adds a little bit to it. Rather than just a brass lamp, I've said it's a brass lamp with a carving of a dragon on it. Just adds that bit extra. A skeleton of a lizard in a jar. Yep, but I've also had that you could swear you saw move. So something a little bit strange about that. A jar labeled poison with a black liquid inside. A top hat covered in black raven's feathers. So not just a top hat, but it's covered in these raven's feathers all over it. And again, I've added stuff just to where you find it. So in a dark corner, and I've had it lit by a flickering lamp. underneath a layer of cobwebs that you actually have to push your hand through. Maybe there's like those little, those little like spider egg things. They come in little sacks and then they hatch out. There's like tiny little white spiders and loads of them. And maybe when you push your hand through, it's like hundreds of little tiny white spiders go all over your hand. Behind the counter on incredibly high shelves. So maybe it goes up really, really high. So this is like ladder almost going up to this item right at the top. In a rusted old iron chest, just that creaks when you open it. So just added a tiny little detail there. In a tiny hole in the wall where you can reach in up to your elbow. So not just like a little, gap in the wall, just like a hole you can reach in and go right in up to your elbow. And right at the end, that's where you find your object. So that's what I want us to do. That's your task. To think of some things that you find in the shop and where you find each item and add a little bit extra for each one. A minimum of 5 things and where you found them, a maximum of 8. We don't need that many. So between 5 and 8 things that you find in the shop and where you find each item. That's the task for today. And hopefully there'll be some amazing ideas.